All right, everyone. Good afternoon. So excited to be here with all of you. Who here is excited to learn about being in business? Raise your hand. Awesome. You're in the right place. So I would love us to, I'm Joan-Claire Gilbert, in case some of you don't know who I am. Eric and I will be leading a series of 3 webinars this month in February, and this is the first of 3. I would love us to start off with an intention here. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Let's create a breakthrough for you today on how focusing on who you're being as an individual leader and as a business team has the potential to create extraordinary results for your business. And the way we're going to do that is I want you to listen as if you paid 10K to be here today. I want you to show up here coming from a being of, I'm going to create a 10,000 ROI from just this, hour or less webinar. And the way I want you to do that is to listen generously, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But I also want you to, if you have a pen and paper handy, to just capture, at least 1 to 3 ideas that stand out to you as I'm speaking and sharing. And so you can revisit those later and implement them in your business. As far as the content for what I'm going to share today, fundamentally, this is about what is being and why it matters in business. And we're going to look at that through the lens of as an individual leader and then also as a team. And Eric and I have so much to share with all of you that even 3 one-hour webinars is just like a drop in the bucket in terms of what we want to share with you about being in business and how that can help you create amazing results with your team. So we've also created a 6-month being in business training and mastermind program that you'll be invited to join at the end of this webinar with other business leaders. So to just, give you guys all a little background on who I am, how I got into being in business, why this is even interesting to me, I just want to give you a little flavor for what my background is growing up. So I grew up in the outskirts of Salem, Oregon, in the country on a tree family nursery business. My parents moved to Oregon from Texas, where they studied soil science in grad school. And my mom is a Chinese immigrant. She's from Taiwan, and my dad's a Missouri farm boy. And, growing up, I was on the farm a lot from infancy up until high school, essentially. And, hearing in the backseat of the car over the dinner table about employee issues and, conflicts and employee performance and just all the dynamics of human relationships in the workplace. And so I really, from a young age, had a kind of an understanding in myself of, not only growing trees, but growing people. And my dad was a really inspiring business leader for me as I saw him out there in the field with his employees. He wasn't one to just stay in the office and kind of, command from above. He was out there in the fields with his employees oftentimes, getting to know them, practicing Spanish and understanding their needs and interests. And that was just, that really made an impression on me from a young age. And then, one particular instance that jumps out at me is when he called aside one of his key managers actually and spoke straight with him about his chain smoking habit. Not every employer might do that. They might just say, okay, as long as they're getting the job done, I'm good with that. They go home, they get their paycheck. But my dad was truly being for his manager's success as a whole person. And, he called him aside and said, hey, if you keep this up, are you going to be around for your wife and kids? And so that's another instance that just really stands out in my mind regarding my dad and a way of being in business that I think is truly effective. And one more thing on my dad, they're mostly retired by now, but he would always, in listening to his employees and trying to get to the bottom of issues as they came up, he would always use the key phrase, help me understand. He would put himself in a place of not even not above his employee, but not even equal, but kind of below in some way, that way to say, help me understand what's going on here. So that would, invite some vulnerability and some openness from his employees. And then moving on beyond that, I want to share from the family business. I went on to Princeton to get my economics degree on the East Coast. That was a big cultural shock for me, growing up in the country in Oregon. Went on to Notre Dame Law School and became a practicing attorney. Met my husband. We got married in Portland, Oregon, close to where I grew up. Got married, and we now have 3 kids. When we moved to Arizona here 4 years ago, I started coaching about 3.5 years ago, and fundamentally started doing emotional intelligence kind of work in my coaching, more self-leadership.
Yeah, I think Joan-Claire's Zoom internet stopped, so give her a moment to re-log in. Jean-Claire's re-logging in, so she'll be back with us momentarily.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I guess I seemed fine. I don't know what happened here. It was a little spotty this morning, but no one's at home using the internet, so I apologize for that. Let me get going here again. I can find where I was here. Okay. Apologize for that. Okay, so where did I leave off here? You guys can all hear me still? We're good? Okay, thank you. So I was speaking about Lloyd Fickett, I believe, when I got cut off there, but I invited him for the demolition chapter of The Ultimate Coach, and in preparation for that call, I really wanted to read his book called The Collaborative Way, which was referenced in The Ultimate Coach. And in reading that, I became completely enamored with this book. It's 100 pages, very elegant, simple, but powerful paradigm for a way of being in business. And when we had Lloyd on that call, we got to flesh that out a little bit more, and how he developed that. But coming off of that, I shared my passion with Eric and offered ideas for, bringing that more into the LinkedIn group. And we decided to lead a 7-week book reading of The Collaborative Way, coming from who we're being in business. And from there, the rest is history. Eric and I started brainstorming and coming up with a plan here to bring being into business more, and also bringing in the collaborative way as well. So we all want certain results in our business, right? What kind of results are most important for you in your business right now? Is it increasing profitability, engagement, retention? If you have access to the chat, maybe just put in the chat as I read these and you notice them here, like what's one of these 1 or 2 that are most important to you right now? I don't know if I'll be able to see it, but increasing retention, innovation, increasing collaboration, alignment. You know, sometimes if you're on an executive team, are you having alignment with your business partners? Or is it dysfunctional and you're all on a different page in terms of what you want to create in your business? On the flip side, do you want to reduce efficiency and waste in your business? Do you want to reduce gossip and turnover and reduce conflict and delay? See a few things in the chat here. Increase profitability and engagement. Okay, great. Just bought out my partner. Okay, profit. All right. Everyone wants more profit, right? So just want to help you get connected to the actual results that you want to create in your business before we dive more into being. Okay. See if this slide will shift. Okay, so how can we create these results most effectively? That's a question I want us to ask. How can we create these results most effectively? And number two, can we achieve all these results with one paradigm of working together? You know, a proven paradigm that builds an entire team of leaders. We're not talking about just the leaders at the top being leaders and everyone else following orders here, but an entire team from the top to the bottom that is holding each other accountable to a paradigm, a way of being that is hugely effective. And not only that, but it also helps us be the best parent, you know, the best spouse or partner, the best daughter or son. Imagine a paradigm that could do that for your business with increasing profitability, but building a team of leaders and all those other results on the previous slide. So the answer is yes, we can most effectively create our desired business results, and that's by focusing on who we are being. Big news here, right? Who are we being? But as a continual practice, this isn't a one-time thing. This is a shared, an individual or shared commitment to looking at who we're being. You might be asking, what is being? I know many of you know what being is, but for people who don't, I would just simplify it and say it's at the most basic level. It's the position you're coming from, or another way to look at that is how you relate to someone, including yourself or something. So it's how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, and how you relate to the world. And importantly, everything you do comes from who you're being. You know, there's some nuance here, like, you know, doing is the fruit and seed of being, and we don't need to go into that here now. But fundamentally, all your actions come from who you're being. So as leaders, sometimes, this is the way I look at it, sometimes we take our gifts or survival mechanisms from childhood a bit too far, and they become default patterns of being that don't serve our desired outcomes. So these are some examples of default patterns of being that I use for myself and with clients, generally speaking, and I have a free assessment that I guide through clients with that helps them become aware of these. But just for yourself, you might take a look at these as I go through them and ask yourself, you know, which one of these ways of being is perhaps something that I, you know, could become more aware of, first, just from awareness perspective. So you could think of, you know, some being controlling rather than allowing, being mistrustful rather than trusting. You know, we all suffer from being judgmental at times. Could shift to being curious. These are really, you know, what I think of as maybe opposite ways of being. Seeking approval rather than serving. Avoiding rather than immediate action. Expecting the worst rather than being optimistic. Fearful or contracted, you might say all of these are in some way embodying fear or contraction rather than expansive. Another one is maybe being more status oriented and competitive in the workplace as a leader or whatever role you have, rather than self-affirming and self-validating. So just would love for you all to, you know, take 30 seconds here, perhaps jot down for yourself. If you notice yourself, you can think of instances and bring to mind instances even in the last month or two where you have been coming from a place of being controlling rather than allowing with your colleagues, for example, or seeking approval or pleasing others rather than focusing on serving them and being for them. Just want to give you just a few seconds here to look at that and reflect on that. Another way to look at this too is from your team's perspective. If you can think of, not from a judgmental standpoint, but just you see some of your team members acting out of these default ways of being, you know, again, not to judge them, but just to see that in others as well, and how that doesn't serve your business outcomes. David, did you have a quick question? I don't know if you can go off mute.
Not a question really, but I had a situation happen, I think last week, where my excuse me, my bookkeeper, I have an accounting office, came to me and she started crying. I mean, tears like coming out of her face. She realized, she thought she had screwed up something and omitted something and not filed some payroll taxes for a client, and she was in tears, and I could tell that she was about to volunteer to have the penalties come out of her paycheck. I said, no, we don't do that. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to mitigate the issue as much as we can. I'll talk to the client. We'll learn from this. We'll move on. And it turns out that she didn't make a mistake after all, but she thought she had. And I said, this is this, but we move on from this. And she goes, but I said, yes, we'll do this to make the penalties as little as possible. I'll talk to the client. We'll take responsibility for it, and we'll move on. And I said, you were expecting to be yelled at, weren't you? It says, yes, we don't do that here.
Wonderful.
That's not what we do. And,
yeah.
And what that does is it gets loyalty, and
Yep.
it also creates clients, creates conscientiousness where they want to do well for us. So
Amazing.
That's what happened. I mean, it was like, it could have been like a $5,000 out of our pocket or more, and we could have lost one of the biggest clients that we had. And I said, look, this is what we're going to do. We move forward, we learn from it, but you got to learn from it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that, David. I appreciate that. That's a beautiful example of taking a curious approach, right, rather than judgmental. And you helping her shift is a great skill set as a leader. So I acknowledge you for that. I'm going to keep moving through the slides here. I don't think I have a lot of time for questions, but I just wanted to see if you had a brief question there. So I would love, based on what I said, just generally speaking, what are your current ways of being as a leader of your team and your business, and what kind of results are they creating? So Eric and I want to share this fundamental paradigm alongside the collaborative way, which is 3 foundational principles of being. Number 1, we're always being. There's never a time that we're not being. So it's not like we're really choosing to be. We're always being, but we can observe our default, our current way of being. And then 3rd, we can choose to shift it. So there's just three foundational principles. You can bring yourself back to this. If you remember anything, remember that you're always being. You can observe your being, and you can shift your being. So awareness really is the first step here about being able to shift your being, right? So when we are unaware, there's a lot less possibility of shifting our being. And fundamentally, being is the key driving factor for the actions we take and the results we have as a business. So just want to share a quick story here about an attorney client that I coached. And sometimes it's just a matter of noticing that recurring pattern and then choosing to shift it. Sometimes it takes a little more upfront work with a client or yourself to reflect on what is that default pattern of being that's unhelpful. It's hard to see for yourself sometimes, so that can be helpful to work with a coach. But she had some struggles with her confidence, her executive presence, and assertiveness. And in coaching together, we discovered that from childhood and her cultural upbringing, so it's also a firmly ingrained cultural aspect of her culture, was she developed an idea that asking for what I want or sharing my ideas is being audacious. It's being arrogant. Or the term that she uses, it's stepping on others' toes to share my opinion or to be assertive or ask questions. And there was also some childhood patterns here that I'm not going to go into, but the result is that she rarely spoke up at her firm meetings or contributed her ideas to more senior attorneys or asked questions. And so really it just took the uncovering of that seeing of where that came from and then seeing as it comes up all the time. So once you notice it one time, you can start noticing it a lot more easily. And the result of that is she's decided to shift, you know, seeing that it was so unhelpful, she decided to shift to a being of my opinion matters and my input is valuable. And it tremendously improved her contribution to her firm because she started introducing herself to, you know, key prospective clients at networking events, and started speaking up with her colleagues and clients and sharing her perspective on client matters. And you can imagine the results on the business team and the organization as a whole, when even one person becomes more aware of their being and how that's not serving the business, not serving themselves in their own career, and so forth. So let's want to share a paradigm here that I think that many of us, many business leaders who don't have the awareness of being are operating from. Just as a contrast, you know, many of us know about being, but forget that maybe a lot of us, a lot of business leaders and even ourselves at times are operating from a paradigm where we're focused more on the doing, right? We're very aware of the actions we're taking and our employees are taking, the results that we're getting. And then, you know, being is kind of thought of as like how we want other people to see us. It's kind of an outside in approach rather than an inside out. We're focusing on how does the world, or how do our customers, or how does the industry view us as a business? So what I just want to share that as a contrast here, if it helps, you know, when you go back into your own workplace to really see when the opposite is in operation, so that you can decide to shift more to the being rather than the doing. So yeah, like taking all kinds of actions so they can have their desired results and finally be recognized by the outside world as a top producer or industry performer, or whatever it is that you want, by the outside world. So we're really taking an inside out approach here. To create a powerful being, we really want to get super clear on who we're currently being. I've already talked about this in terms of awareness, but I want to emphasize here on this slide that it's a conscious creation. Okay, so we're getting out of the awareness realm of what we're doing to shift here and more into the conscious creation. And I'm just speaking a little bit theoretically here in this slide, but it will take you a lot farther because you can consciously create that being and not operate out of the unconscious or it's just this way kind of being. I mean, I'm, as much as anyone out there, subject to that. It's just this way. I don't have ownership of this. There's nothing I can do to change this. Like, I'm just this way, or he's just this way, or the market is just this way. There's nothing I can do about it, right? So that's really a fundamental concept here, is we want to move out of the it's just this way kind of being and into a created world versus a world that we report on how things are. So I want to emphasize this is, you know, as a reality check here, it's not just this way. This is a really important slide. It's not just this way. You get to create it. You get to create your own being as the leader of your team. And every member of your team gets to create their being once they have awareness of this. And your team as a whole has the ability to create its shared being as a team. Okay, so just want to really emphasize that it's really coming from a place of creation and not it's just this way. Another way to look at this in terms of the created being that you want to create is to reverse engineer, to move upstream. You can go from the desired results that you pointed out that you owned in the beginning of the webinar, profitability and so forth, move upstream. So, you know, we said be, do, have. Let's go backwards and do have, do, be. We want to have increased profitability. Okay, what actions do we need to do? Do we need to take to get those results? What kind of thoughts would I need to have to take those actions? And then what kind of being would I need to have that would create those thoughts? And sometimes the thought and language in the being sometimes isn't super clear, but it's, you know, it's really fundamentally what beliefs would I need to have, or what place would I need to come from to have the kind of thoughts that would produce the action and the results that I want in my business. Might have alluded to this in the previous slide, but a key distinction here is that you do not have to find evidence first. You get to choose, consciously create the state of being, the way you create yourself, others, and circumstances. You really just fundamentally first step, choose it, and then the evidence will follow the more you practice this. Okay, and if this is an idea that's totally new to you, don't need to take my word for it. I just encourage you to try it on. Try on the idea that you could choose a state of being or just a belief about yourself, others of the world, colleagues, clients, vendors, whoever you interact with. And then and only then find evidence for it. And it'll naturally come the more you choose the being and decide to come from that place of being. So I want to give you some more real world kind of examples of what I'm talking about here. These are just some examples I came up with just thinking about, workplaces and people I've coached and, growing up in a family business. So on the left, we have here some unconscious default ways of being. They'll become conscious the more you practice this, right? But often the times these are unconscious. It's just this way. The world's just this way. People are just this way. I'm just this way. The market's unfavorable right now. What if you could come from a place of the market always works in our favor, no matter what? My employees are incompetent. Some leaders go around all day having a looping story, like my employees are incompetent. Can you imagine how powerful that way of being is as a leader in your company at, enrolling others in what you're up to? On the flip side, you could come from a being just as easily with practice of my employees are insightful. My employees are talented. I'm not good at hiring. Maybe that's a belief that you've developed. Maybe you had a few bad hires and you've just taken on the meaning that I'm bad at hiring. Well, you could come from that place of being, or you could come from a place that I hire only the best and the brightest. You could look deeper into it, but you could just decide to come from that place and speak that to yourself and feel it and imagine it. And you might see some shifts in your results. My colleagues don't understand me, to my message falls upon open ears. It's not like you need to take any one of these and adopt the one on the right. I'm just giving you some examples that you might, as a possibility, take on as a new way of being. Sherry is slow at payroll. You might have that story that just like, Sherry's just that way. I can't believe this lady, she's so slow. To Sherry is detailed and conscientious. Okay. It's an entirely different way of being with Sherry in this case. Bob loses his temper. Maybe he, lashes out at times. To Bob is passionate and truly cares. Our competitors have more experience. To we are well equipped to excel in our market. Coming from a place of comparison and being less than, to being great, to being the best. And here's the last example. I can't trust Bill to speak the truth. To Bill speaks the truth when he feels heard. So those are just some examples. But fundamentally, a lot of this is just about finding and speaking the gold in others, maybe before you even see glimmers of it in others and situations and even yourself. And then creating what you want through your being and speaking, not what you don't want. So what we have here on the left is creating more of what we don't want. And what we have on the right is creating more of what we do want. It's your choice. If you're adopting being as a way of increasing your business results, this is a possibility for you to try on. At least you don't need to believe me, but it's something that as a possibility you could try on. I just give a little example for myself from my own personal life. One of my declarations is that my husband and kids are my greatest teachers and are perfect in every way. And that's not something that I found a ton of evidence for necessarily. I mean, I can think of instances where I had that awareness and then, decided to create that declaration, but I just decided that was a much more effective, but also joyful way of being with my family, rather than finding fault in them and, ways they should be different and ways they're wrong and I'm right. And so I consciously created that declaration that my husband and kids are my greatest teachers and are perfect in every way. And so now when I'm with them, I come from that place. So, if I see them being messy in the kitchen, it's not like It's not like, oh, I don't care that they're making a mess, but I fundamentally come from a position that they're perfect and they're my greatest teachers. And that doesn't mean that I don't speak straight at times with them, like, hey, Lucia and Neil, could you please, clean up after yourself in the kitchen? It's not that we just pretend, the world's all rosy and don't speak straight with people or share our feelings. But when we come from love and from a place that's empowering, we can be so much more effective with them and build rapport. And it also shifts their being when we're being a certain way. So that's a piece that I'm not going to get into in this webinar, but when our being shifts, it shifts others' being, and it becomes this kind of like a wildfire effect as well. So I want to look at this, what I just shared in this slide from another lens here on what different actions you would take. We saw in the previous slide how that might serve you just in terms of, from other angles, but really want to focus on the actions you would take if you came from the way of being on the right. So if you're coming from the market always works in our favor versus the market is unfavorable right now, can you imagine what different actions that would create in your business? For me, I'm thinking, you could type it in the chat, but fundamentally from the market is unfavorable, I would think there would not be a lot of action. There'd be a being of contraction and fear in the employees and in the leadership team. But if you're coming from a being of the market always works in our favor, you could imagine, more risk-taking, more innovation, more insights onto, finding ways to have the market serve our business in this time and gain a competitive edge, perhaps. So my employees are insightful. What kind of actions would you take with your employees if you see them as insightful versus incompetent? One idea that I think of is that if you're thinking your employees are incompetent, are you going to be giving them a lot of work and helping them test their own abilities and make mistakes and learn from them? You're going to be micromanaging them, or on the flip side, if they're insightful, you might be giving them some challenges to grow and take ownership of their work and really increase your talent of your current team. Let's see how much time we have here. I hire only the best and the brightest. How is that going to influence your actions as a business leader in hiring? You're going to be very confident as a business leader to look out there for the best talent? Or are you just going to put yourself down and kind of resign to, my employees, I don't hire really competent people. So I just wanted to, give you some examples here. I think all of you can see here that the actions you would take from the ones on the left versus the right is truly going to be different, and that it has effects, as we noted earlier from the be, do, have model on your results for your business, and fundamentally one of them being your profitability and your engagement and your attention and all of those results we spoke about. So one more distinction, I don't think I have a whole lot more here, but one more distinction here is on the individual being versus a shared team being. So we can always choose to slow down and observe who we're being as individual leaders. That's entirely within our own control. We can't always, intentionally shift other people's being, but through our own being, right? We do have the ability to create shifts in other people's being indirectly by who we're being. But additionally, as a team, we can commit to observe as a whole, as a team, our individual being, our team being, and then shift to a state of being that has been proven to create the business results we all desire, along with more joy and trust and engagement. So that's more of a mutual accountability to a shared team commitment to a way of being. And that's what I'll be sharing a little bit more about with the collaborative way. So while you as the leader, owner, can independently adopt, more empowering beliefs that help you get the results you want, how much more powerful would it be if you could come from a place that a consciously chosen way of being, that I am someone that listens generously. And I'll go into these all a little bit more in the following slide, but just to share with you the fundamental paradigm, these are all geared toward what we're up to as a company, our mission, our vision, our project, goals. This is a shared way of being that we have together as we're accomplishing our mission, vision, goals. And that is to listen generously, to speak straight. I am being someone that's for others, for their success, for the business success, honoring commitments, and acknowledging and appreciating. And this is, again, it's a continual practice. How much more powerful could your business team be if you practice this each day at work? It's not only the work you're doing, but there's like a heart soul work that's going on in the background, like a meta project going on under, or you could say underneath what's going on of what we're accomplishing in our actions in the business and who we interact with. We're working on building a team of leaders through this paradigm. So asking yourself, does your team have a commitment to be someone who listens deeply with each other, letting go of judgments or filters? So filters mean we have ways of creating others and, I'm right, she's wrong, he always says the same thing. And those are filters. They act to the contribution or value as to what someone's saying to us. So when we can listen deeply and practice continuing listening generously, we can learn to let go of those judgments and filters because we're aware of them. Speaking straight rather than letting issues or concerns fester. This is a huge one. I think many of you as business leaders can think of examples where perhaps you have not spoken straight to your employees or other colleagues about a key issue that's extremely important, perhaps for fear of upsetting them or causing some upset, right? No one really likes to, I don't know anyone that really likes to have difficult conversations. But that's a way of being that you can decide to come from, is to speak straight about issues that are important rather than letting them fester and contribute to further problems and potentially catastrophic issues in your own company. Another one is honoring the commitments that your team members make and receive, keeping others informed. So that's a lot about having a shared commitment, not just a one-way commitment, but a two-way commitment, being for each other while you honor your commitments. Another one is assuming the best in others' actions and taking actions in others' best interest, and also for the company. And then finally, acknowledging and appreciating others in specific ways consistently. Meaningful acknowledgements, not just like good job, but really making an intentional effort to notice when people are putting in an extra effort and making sacrifices and doing a really great job, and acknowledging it to them either personally or in front of other people, in front of your whole team. So if this is not your team's current way of being, at least across the board, then on some level, it's being is by default unconscious and unaligned, because everyone's coming from different cultural and family and work backgrounds, and they have their own ideas about how to work together. So unless your team has a shared commitment to a certain way of being that's effective, that's been proven to be effective, over 25, 30 years, it's by default unconscious and unaligned. So my proposal here for all of you is to take a conscious decision to skew your team's being that's unconscious toward the most powerful conscious being in order to get the results you want and grow a team of leaders. So, this slide is really about, in the previous one I was sharing about how you could come from the unconscious being on the left to the one on the right. When you adopt the collaborative way, those 5 core commitments, you're really putting some firepower behind having this new conscious way of being, of believing that your boss is modeling generous listening with you, that your team members honor their commitments. You could independently come up with the ideas on the right as a way of being, but how much more powerful is it if your team as a whole adopted this shared commitment and really added a lot of oomph behind believing that your colleagues are being for your success and assuming positive intent and all that. So this is really adding a lot of power behind being, when we can get everyone on the same page, that we're not only going to come from this way of being, but we're going to hold each other to account while being attentive for how it's being received. We're going to speak straight, if it makes sense and it's being for each other's success and for the success of the company, but we're also going to be attentive to how it's being received. We're not just going to, obviously vent at people or complain or anything like that. So as an example here, being a generous listener, I just wanted to break down that one a little bit further. Not going to go into the other ones in detail, but just to give you a little flavor of the depth of each of these commitments. It's not just a superficial commitment to listen, generously. There's a lot to it that can be impacted and practiced in your daily work life. So it's both a way of being and a practice. Our doing is the fruit of the seed of our being, right? As a continual learner, getting better and better at it. And fundamentally, it's noticing when you're not being that. That's the first step. So when am I judging the speaker? When am I being 100% right? When am I being distracted? When am I listening to fix? And on the flip side, and rather than judging, you can drop your judgments and get curious. Rather than being right, you can decide to come from a place of I'm willing to be influenced. And rather than distracted, you could be present in the moment and come back to center, right? Come back to the moment. You get distracted, start thinking about something else, come back. Listening to fix, rather, and on the flip side, listening to understand. What is this person really trying to contribute here? What's the value that they're trying to share with me? Rather than trying to just fix what they're saying and ignore what they're sharing with you. So going back to the misalignment piece or unalignment, I would say, is without the shared commitment, everyone's operating according to their own default, unconscious, unaligned manual. A metaphor you might think of as a gardening hose that's just on light, like a light mist, right? We're just lightly misting. That's the force of the action behind our vision and our mission and our goals. But when we come together with the shared alignment of having these shared commitments, imagine how much more powerful and forceful and effective our team can be when we're all on the same page as to how to relate to each other, how to work together, how to hold each other to account, coming from love and curiosity, empathy, rather than from fear and judgment and controlling and all those default patterns that don't serve us individually or as a team. So when we as a team listen to understand rather than be right, trust, engagement, innovation, productivity, profitability all increase. So don't need to take my word from it. Try it on. If you begin to listen to your team members more generously, you might find that the actions and the way of being of your colleagues changes, and that does affect your results because there's different actions being taken and a different culture is being generated in your company. Let's see here. Did I share that story? Yeah, I think I might have. Did I share the story of the two people I coached that were fighting together in the organization and then coach them out of that? No? Okay, I might have missed that. So just wanted to, I know we're getting closer to time here, but when I coached a couple leaders at an organization who were in heated conflict, and it was negatively impacting the entire organization because these are two key leaders at the, not the executives, but at the top of the firm in terms of human resources. And a huge breakthrough for them was just in seeing that they were creating each other as he or she's undermining me. They each had this story of he or she's undermining me. And you can imagine walking around the business all day with having this looping story of he or she is undermining me, how that would impact the entire organization, because these are key players that are interacting with everyone in the organization. And then they would start to ask, colleagues like, did she say something about me? Or like, what did she do behind my back? And so it's just creating this really not healthy workplace culture. And so once I help them begin to see that, the awareness piece that they're creating this story of assuming not positive intent, assuming negative intent, they could begin to come from a place of truly being for each other, which is one of the commitments of the collaborative way, assuming positive intent, and then their entire relationship shifted. And in the course of 8 or 9 weeks, essentially becoming each other's greatest supporters at work rather than like, each other's nemesis. So just wanted to share that for the power of awareness of default ways of being in the workplace for your team members to have. It can help with an outside coach, of course, but for them to really begin as a continual practice to notice their way of being with their colleagues and then to decide to shift that is a really powerful concept. Just going back to the foundational principle of we're always being, we can observe our being and we can shift our being. So finally here, before I get into the next piece, I just want to let you know and kind of summarize this all is that when you lean into being in business in the collaborative way and through continued practice, this is a leaning in and a continued practice, you'll become so much more impactful and effective as a leader, and so will your team and business. So now I want to share with you all the opportunity I introduced at the beginning of the webinar. This has been something that Eric and I are really excited to bring to the world starting next month. It's a mastermind for people who are in business that lead teams. And this includes managers, business owners, CEOs, or anyone who's leading a team. Maybe you're in a nonprofit, could be any kind of organization where you're leading a team. The dates of this mastermind are going to be on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to have 90-minute group calls twice a month. And it's going to be for 6 months starting in March. Going back to what I shared in the earlier slides, when you shift your being, you create the possibility to shift all your vendors, your joint venture partners, your clients, pretty much everyone you're in contact with in your business. You shift your entire company and all the people that interact with your company. It's a huge impact that you have as a business leader, frankly. And that's what's so exciting to me about being in business in the collaborative way is the ripple effects that occur when a business leader decides to take the ownership of this and bring it into the organization. And that affects all their team members and their families and all the people they interact with. And then your business as a living being as well, it's interacting with other businesses and just, it's mind-blowing, right? In terms of the power that you wield through your role as a leader. And if that's something that inspires you as well, then I encourage you to take this on and explore it further. So during this mastermind, you're going to grow you fundamentally. So that's where it starts, is within each of us. So you're going to grow you. And that's going to be the beginning. That's going to be the stone in the lake, the rock in the puddle. That's going to start creating the ripples. So you're going to gain clarity on not only who you're being, but you're also going to get clarity on your destination, where you are now, but also where you're going, and how you can get your team aligned behind a common vision and mission as well. So all those practices of, speaking straight, listening generously, acknowledge and appreciate, honoring commitments. The reason those are all effective in the workplace is because they're all geared toward what we're up to as a company. We don't just practice this to become get along at work only. We actually do practice this to further the goals that we're up to. And it's important to be clear at the outset of what that goal is, what the destination is. So in this mastermind, you're going to learn how to incorporate your business into your document or declarations. I haven't used those terms in this webinar, but Eric will be giving a separate webinar. I believe it's the second one of this 3-part series on bringing your business into your document. And essentially what that is your consciously created being in language, a series of declarations, you might call them, or personal internal commitments to who you're being, your consciously created being. And how the second part is how being in business can help you achieve better business results. So we'll be going further into some of the nuances that I shared with you today, and also the collaborative way process, the commitments and the process behind that, and helping you learn about that, practice it, write out. This is not going to just be theoretical mastermind. This is about implementing and learning from your colleagues, or learning from the other participants in the mastermind as well, not just Eric and me. So what's included is 6 months of being in business training. And that's essentially twice a month, hour-and-a-half calls. And they're going to include 30 minutes of training, similar to, something similar to the webinar, perhaps 30 minutes of masterminding with the other participants in the mastermind group, and then 30 minutes of Q&A and group sharing. And importantly, all the calls will be recorded. So if you need to miss any of the calls, you'll be able to watch the replays and be able to gain the value that way. Additionally, this is pretty value jam-packed here. We're going to have an all-day being in business training to get you get your feet wet and really dive in from the outset on what is being in business, and really help you to generate some close bonds with the other people in the mastermind, so we can really build a lot of the synergy and connection right from the get-go. It also includes a one-on-one coaching session, a total of 1 hour. It could be 30 minutes with Eric, 30 minutes with me, or 1 hour with either of us, perhaps. And then also an optional Facebook group to keep the camaraderie and the questions and all that going in between calls. And as we're offering a bonus as well, so if you want to add a key person in your business, you may do so at no extra cost. The reason we're doing that is, of course, so much of this, the value in this is bringing other team members into this way of being and spreading it in your company and organization. So if there's someone in your business you'd like to bring on as a team member, you can bring them in at no extra cost. The investment for the mastermind is going to be $15,000. This is the fee that we're going to eventually charge once we have case studies to demonstrate the value of being in business and the collaborative way. It's going to be so much value that's coming from the awareness piece and the daily practice and shifting your entire organization. We're going to limit it to a group of 12 participants, and we'll be adding participants in until we reach 12. So we're not going to delay starting the mastermind if we don't initially have 12 right off the bat, but we'll be adding those in along the way. We're only charging $3,000 for it as an initial go through the mastermind. So just a fraction, a fifth of what we'll be charging. And you are able to pay this upfront in an entire $3,000 or through 7 payments of $500. So the next steps, if this is something that you would love to do, I would ask that you request an interview by emailing me. I have a little bit of a long email address here, but if you want to write it down, it's uplevel@joanclairecoaching.com. So I have an E after my Claire, so it's JOANCLAIRE coaching.com. And again, just wanted to put up here what's included is the 6 months of business and being in business training, the 2 90-minute calls with the 30 minutes training, mastermind, and Q&A, all day being in business training, and the hour coaching session. We're offering a little double bonus here. So if you request an interview with me in the next 10 minutes, you'll get an additional hour of coaching for a total of 2 hours of one-on-one coaching, either Eric or me or both. So again, just if you would like to have that double bonus, request an interview with me at uplevel@joanclairecoaching.com. So I just wanted to, as a
Joan-Claire,
close.
before you do that, could I jump in and share a couple things?
Sure, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Fantastic. Well, first off, Joan-Claire, thank you for a tremendous training today. The content was outstanding.
Thank you.
I also want to thank all of you for participating. This is our first being in business training, and thank you all for participating. I wanted to just speak just a little bit about the program for any of you watching live or watching the recording. I've been a business leader now. I'm in my 26th year, and sometimes it can really feel like you're by yourself. And so what's going to be great about the mastermind is you're going to have Joan-Claire and I on your team, as well as up to 12 other leaders. And then we're offering that extra opportunity for you to bring on one of the key people in your company. And one of the things about leadership for me, and this is true for Joan-Claire as well, we both are living in being every day. So Joan-Claire, she leads our LinkedIn Ultimate Coach group, and she's living and breathing being every day. She's also extremely involved with the Collaborative Way, which is one of the leadership books that Steve Hardison references in the book, The Ultimate Coach. So in Joan-Claire, you have somebody that's living and breathing these principles. And then me with leading the Being movement, I'm living and breathing these principles every day as well. And I'm a different person than I was 2 years ago when the Being movement started. My initial involvement was in the Facebook group, and it's grown now. We have a YouTube team, a live events team. There's the events I lead. Now we have Being in Business. We have the Instagram team. We have the LinkedIn team. We have the book readings, and there's probably some others that I'm not remembering. And so I have a number of teams that are reporting to me. And so there's leadership and action. And I've changed as a human being as a result of leading the Being movement. My relationship with my children is different. My relationship with my wife is different. How I lead my other company, my sales training business, has shifted. So we are excited for those of you who would like to do a deep dive. And if you come in on this initial group, I mean, the pricing is so affordable. And what I believe is going to happen for up to 12 of you that participate, 6 months from now, once you've completed the curriculum, you'll be a different person, just like Joan-Claire and I are both different people now from the leadership that we've been doing. And so what that's going to result in is you're going to lead differently, which is going to impact your entire company. It's going to impact all your vendors, your stakeholders, your investors, your employees, your contractors, your customers or clients. And then, although this is not a focus on being with your family, you can't separate the two because being's being. So I think that this will be one of the most transformational experiences of your entire life. And we're really excited to work with those of you that would like to work with us. And as Joan-Claire indicated, the next step would be to request an interview, and she put the email address up there. And we're both just really excited to work with you. So Joan-Claire, with that, I'm going to turn it back to you for any final thoughts you have. And Joan-Claire, you're on mute there if you're there.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. My internet's been really spotty today, so I was gone for the last 2 minutes or a minute or so. Yeah, I just want to thank Eric in particular for introducing me to his network and for his belief in me and being his business partner in this endeavor. We both have a lot of shared passion and energy behind being in business, and it's truly an honor for me to work alongside Eric in this effort, bringing being into business in the coming months and years. And I also was particularly excited to be training with Eric on this topic, as we'll be practicing the collaborative way in our own business relationship as well. We've already committed to practicing those 5 core commitments in our own business relationships. So I know that'll be additionally impactful for the participants in our mastermind when we're living, being products of the product as well. And just want to thank all of you for attending today. Thank you so much for listening attentively and generously. And I hope you took away at least 1 or 2 golden nuggets that you can implement immediately in your own business. I look forward to having an interview with any of you who are interested in participating in the mastermind. It's going to blow your socks off. So if there's anyone in your world who might be interested in participating, please share that with them as well. And that pretty much wraps up what we have for you today. So thank you so much for attending, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for
Bye,
joining.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.